Assalamu alaikum students. I hope all of you are doing good. Yes, today's lecture, our today's lecture is about the major topic areas which are basically often tested in CSS essay. And after that, I will share with you the techniques as to how to collect and gather information and data about those frequently tested topics. What do I mean by this is that I will tell you different techniques, okay, how to gather the data. I mean, from which angles you should gather the data, okay, which sort of statistics you should be gathering about those particular areas which are often tested. So students ask me a lot of the times that they don't know how to gather data, okay, about the essay paper especially. I mean, they know that they might be expecting an essay on education, but they don't know what to gather about education. So this topic is effectively about those techniques, okay, those areas, those angles, those lens from which to gather information about a particular topic. It's a very effective topic. You have to keep a pen and a register so that you can note down all the important topic areas. So without further delay, let's start. So these are the list of topics basically which have been most tested in CSS exams. Okay, I have taken this list, organized this list about the most frequently tested areas. These topics are from past papers. Okay, and they have been basically organized topic wise. Okay, so let's suppose the topic of poverty, it is tested very often in Pakistan. Okay, it is tested in general about, in the context of the world, but more particularly in the context of Pakistan. So you have to know, what facts to gather. Okay, right now I will just be telling you or showing you which major topic areas are basically often show up in the exams, and later on I will tell you which uh, you know which sort of data to get about each of those topics. For example, regarding poverty, these topics have shown up. Strategies for alleviation of poverty, progressive alleviation of poverty, moral depravity is the root cause of poverty. Second topic which often shows up is democracy. Okay, this often shows up in our CSS exam, CSS essay. Okay, the future of democracy in Pakistan. Democracy is a culture rather than a process. This essay has been tested in 2012. Then, often an essay about Islam is tested. Okay, but it's from different angles. It's not, like simple essay about Islam. Like we do in Islamiyat. It's tested from various angles, like pluralistic vision of Islam, Islam versus the West, the image of Islam in the Western world, and responsibilities of the Muslim Ummah, peace, the essential message of our religion. So these are the topics which have been tested about Islam. Okay, and you can see that they have been tested from different angles. Never was, a topic ditto copy of some previous year. So moving on, education. This is most tested topic. So you have to know everything about education in Pakistan. So these are the some of the essays basically from our past papers. Okay, like you can read them. Okay, education makes people easy to lead but difficult to drive, easy to govern but impossible to enslave, need for serious planning and technical education in Pakistan, reforms in the examination system, co-education, merits, demerits, meaning and purpose of education, English as the medium of education in Pakistan. So these are the topics basically which have shown up about education. Higher education. So within education, a niche topic which has often been tested in past papers is higher education. Okay, like higher education as an agent of change, privatization of higher education. Similarly, energy crisis and water shortage. This is also often tested. Okay, like dilemma of water and energy crisis. Okay, you can read it. But this is not important. I mean, you can just Google it and you will know. You can basically add to this list the latest basically topics from the past papers. Okay. What I want you to know today, which is very important, is coming in the later slides. I will tell you. So this topic is about politics. These are the past papers which have come, which have come up regarding the topic of politics. Okay. The purification of politics, sorry personalization of Pakistani politics. Politics is the art of the possible, not economy, but politics is the key to success. So, once again, politics also has been tested from various angles. UNO, of course, this is also one of those hot topics. Examiners' favorite topic, I would say that. The future of UNO, hopes, hurdles, United Nations in the 21st century, obligations, limitations, global warming. It's a serious issue that the world faces in general and Pakistan faces in particular. So this topic can be expected even in the coming exam. Okay, from various angles this can be tested. So these are just the topic sort of from the past papers basically, which I have basically listed under various heads: terrorism and globalization. Okay, this is often tested. As you can see, there are a lot of topics in this. Okay. Mm, Pakistan's war on terror, dialogue is the best course, international crisis and terrorism, terrorism as a new threat to the contemporary world. The war on terror has contributed to the growing abuse of human rights. This was tested in 2015. So once again, terrorism has also been tested often from different angles, from various angles. Okay, Pakistan and economy of Pakistan. So this is a topic which poses a different challenge. Okay, since most of the candidates which appear in CSS exams, they don't have a background of economics. So this is where they have to put in some extra effort. Economics is a very technical subject, so they need to be aware about the technical terms in the economics. In other words, the jargon which is specific to the subject of economics. Okay, so you have to read the newspaper and you have to pick out some words which are often repeated in the editorials, and you have to Google those words. Okay, so that you can basically know the concepts of some repeatedly used words. Okay, so this is where you have to put in some extra effort. Okay, so these are the topics basically which have appeared in past papers, which have been directly or indirectly related to economy of Pakistan or world economy. Women and gender equality. Once again, there is a growing basically movement for gender equality in the world. So this of course leads down to this topic being often tested in our essay. So these are the topics which have been tested in our past papers. But once again, what I'm going to tell you today is how to gather information about these topics, from what angles. Media, of course. Once again, the media in Pakistan basically has seen a surge after the private media, was allowed. So there have been various advantages, disadvantages. Okay, then comes the social media that is also often basically asked in essay exams. Then governance, of course, very important. When it comes to Pakistan, the issue of governance immediately basically rings the bell. Okay, so this you have to basically tackle this topic. And how you can tackle this topic effectively in CSS exam is by preparing it from different angles, and I will let you know later on in this lecture how to basically gather information, statistics, data about good governance from different angles. Philosophical and literary essays. Now, often I tell my students, and as I have told them, that these are the difficult ones in CSS exam, and they want to three topics in the paper are basically from philosophical or literary domain. For example, the topics like only the wisest and stupidest of men never change, materialism is the death of spirituality, if gold rust, what shall the iron do, liberalism, the search for truth. Similarly, in the next couple of slides, there are some other topics. Philosophical and literary. Continue. This continues to the next slide. Like, to pick up some topic. Dreams for future rely on the work of today. A country's a country is backward because its people are backward. So these are some topics which are from the domain of philosophy and literature. This is again like you know from the same domain, and this is a long list. Okay, like young habits die hard. This is a topic. Then I guess we have one more slide about this. About yes, okay. This is the last slide, which is about philosophical and literary essays. Now this is the important bit. Okay, you have to be very attentive now. Why gathering information is important when it comes to CSS essay. Okay, this is very important. You know, essay basically when it comes to CSS essay, it is nothing but the knowledge quoted in influential words and presented in argumentative style. Okay, how you basically quote the knowledge and you present it in an argumentative style. I mean, how can you basically put on an argument in your essay unless you have solid information, solid data, solid knowledge about the topic? Okay, so this is where knowledge is not maybe the appropriate word, but you can say information or data about a topic is very important. If you have data and information at your disposal, then you can easily basically argue in your essay. You can take a stance, you can prove your stance, so that it becomes a lot easier. Okay, and secondly, why it is important? Because at no point in the essay paper should the examiner be given an opportunity of rating the knowledge or data information of the aspirant as superficial and outdated. Okay, examiner is testing is examiner in test examiner sorry examiner is testing you on three basic things in CSS essay. Number one, he is testing you on your English skills. Okay, how you basically what is your writing style? Okay, are you making any grammatical mistakes? Secondly, he's testing you on the relevancy. Okay, have you understood the topic well? Okay, how have you gone about basically organizing your thought process? And thirdly, is testing whether you have enough knowledge or information or data about that topic to back up your arguments. Okay, so never should the examiner get a feeling that this candidate has superficial and outdated knowledge about the topic which he has basically chosen out of 10 topics. Okay, so examiner has basically given you a a vast choice when it comes to CSS essay, and when you pick up 1 out of 10, then examiner won't tolerate that your knowledge about that basically topic area is superficial or outdated. So you have to be very active or proactive in collecting information about a topic, in collecting data statistics about a topic. Okay, because examiner, if examiner gets even a sniff that this candidate has basically crammed some notes and is not updated about the knowledge, then most probably you won't cross the threshold of 40 marks. Okay, so unless the examiner, the third bullet point, who has already gone through hundreds of essays on the same topic. Okay, let's suppose there is an essay on health. Okay, health in from any perspective, he can ask an essay about health sector in Pakistan, and this is a topic which basically hundreds of candidates would have gone about attempting. Okay, so unless he finds out something new, interesting, and unique in your essay about that particular topic, he is not going to let you be among those who would successfully cross the threshold of 40 marks. So, in essay, only 3% to 5% make it, okay, in the English essay exam. And if you're writing about a topic, okay, and you are not basically giving him something new, something interesting, some updated information about that topic, then the chances that the chances of you making through are very bleak actually. So you have to be very updated. So this aptly explains why gathering information about essay is important. Okay, number one, you can't argue effectively unless you have data, facts, figures at your disposal. Secondly, examiner doesn't like superficial and outdated knowledge. Okay, so you have to have in-depth knowledge about the topic which you are attempting. And lastly, examiner would be basically marking hundreds of scripts. Okay, so unless you present something new, okay, something out of the box, something which is very updated, okay, and you present in an effective or influential words, okay, then only you would be able to cross the threshold of 40, otherwise you won't make it. So this basically has made it clear about the importance of information and data in an essay. But the question arises, which often student pose, is how do they get information about essay, about English essay? I mean, they often students often pose the question that they know how to gather information about current affairs, Pakistan affairs, Islam, all other papers, because they have books about those essays, books written specifically for those topics. But when it comes to essays, several books are available in the market basically, which have some pet essays written. Okay, but how do they basically gather information? What are the techniques? Because most of the books are outdated. And the knowledge which you have to basically present to the examiner in order to be effective should be basically updated. So that is where the techniques come in to gather information. So the acquisition of information, data, knowledge is possible through various sources. For example, you can consult newspapers, and these can be both national and international. So for example, from national newspaper, of course, the most recommended is Dawn. Okay, you don't have to study all the Pakistani newspapers. That would waste a lot of time. Just read Dawn, okay, and give it one hour, okay, on daily basis, and then collect facts and figures. And if you start collecting information from now, it would be enough time for you. And you can consult some international newspapers also, okay, like Washington Post, New York Times. But you don't have to basically collect everything or read everything from those newspapers. First, you have to read if there is anything about Pakistan. Then you have to read something which concerns the entire world. Okay, those issues which are affecting the entire world. You don't have to basically, let's suppose if you're reading Washington Post, you don't have to read everything about US, what is going on in the local politics of the US, which who is the secretary of state, why basically where was he on the tour. Okay, you don't have to read these things. And similarly, when we are using some, when you are reading the Guardian, you don't have to basically delve into the local politics of those, or the local economic conditions of UK. No, you only have to basically read from the international newspapers only those things which basically impact the whole world. Why you have to read those? Because they present the arguments about the issues which concern the world from a different perspective. While maybe Dawn can give you a perspective about the international affairs from Pakistan's perspective, but those papers will give you a world perspective, and a perspective about the issues, world issues, through the lens of the West. So it is important that you also consult, but don't waste too much time on reading newspapers, because you have 11 papers at your disposal. But if you dedicate 1 hour or 1.5 to 2 hours on daily basis, you can collect a lot of information. Secondly, current affair journals. There are various journals available, like There are various current affairs journals in Pakistan internationally, which basically are published on monthly basis. So you have to consult those also, because in journals the information is presented in a very technical way. Okay, when it comes to journals on health, it would be very technical. Technical jargons would be used. So journals can be consulted, okay, provided you have the time. Then magazines, The Economist, this is one of the most, excuse me, this is one of the most authoritative sources of basically analysis on different issues. Okay, the monthly basically magazine The Economist is available on the internet easily, so you can consult this. The Diplomat is also a very important magazine. It's about, you know it mostly writes about the issues of South Asia, Far East, okay, Southeast Asia. So its specialty is writing about the political and economic, you know developments in these areas. Okay, South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia. Then there are research papers. These can be, these are published from by different organizations. For example, research papers can be published on CPAC. They can be published on the situation of Middle East. They can be published on the tensions, political and tensions in the South China Sea, etc. So various organizations publish these various research papers. They also contain a lot of facts and figures. Then official websites, this is very important. Okay, because this is where you get the core statistics about any topic. For example, UN, you can gather a lot of information from the website of UN or from the website of its agencies. Okay, like UNDP, okay, UNICEF, all those things. You can, if you want to gather information about children, UNICEF is the appropriate basically wing of UN. If you want to gather information about some, you know economic stuff about Pakistan, you can consult Pakistan Bureau of Statistics. Similarly, from the Ministry of Finance, you can read Economic Survey of Pakistan. You must read Economic Survey of latest Economic Survey of Pakistan before sitting in the exams. Okay, if you can't read the entire Economic Survey of Pakistan, at least read the summary portion, read the executive summary of this. Okay, that contains a lot of facts. Okay, if you have those facts in your mind, it would be enough. Okay, so you must read, if not possible the entire Economic Survey of Pakistan, the initial summary of the Economic Survey of Pakistan, and which summary, the latest version of the Economic Survey of Pakistan. So this is a must read for the students. So when then there are special investigative reports, like FAFN is one, which basically publishes special reports on, you know the conduct of elections in Pakistan, whether elections were free and fair. Similarly, there are other special investigative reports which are published, and they are basically area focused. Okay, some would be on health sector, some would be on education sector. Lastly, from the very start of the preparation, aspirants should start collecting data regarding the expected 10 to 15 topic areas, which I would be discussing afterwards. And the process should continue till the actual exam day. Okay. Why? Because you need to update your information. Once you have some background information about a most repeated topic, you need to constantly update it. Okay. So that your information is not outdated. Excuse me. So moving on. So the first basically topic which we are going to look is education. Okay, this is a most repeated topic in CSSSC. But which aspects of education should we basically consider when it comes to gathering data and collecting information? Okay, which angles to keep in mind? First of all, you have to know Article 25A, right to education. Okay, you have to have this article in your mind word to word. Okay, you have to, so you can cram it. Okay, you have to keep in mind that you must know this article. Okay, whether it comes, it will help you to basically strengthen your stance or argument, not only in an essay but also in current affairs, Pakistan affairs. So Article 25A, which is related to right to education, which basically states that the state has the responsibility to educate, okay, educate the citizens. Okay, so you can read the whole article on the internet after the lecture, but you have to memorize this article, okay, because this will add weight when you're writing something about education in your essay. Secondly, you can quote Jinnah. Okay, you have to, keep in mind or memorize a couple of quotes on education which Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, might have said at some address. Or you can quote some other established authorities, okay, like Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, all those, key figures, well renowned figures basically, which have, said something about education. So quotes what our constitution says, what different established authorities say about education, then policy options. Remember, whenever you are going to research about a topic area, the first thing you should talk or research or gather information about is the policy options. Okay, so like for example, in education, we the government develops national education policy. Various policies have been developed or basically made in the past, okay, and currently also there is a national education policy and the government is thinking about revising it, okay. So you need to know about national education policies of previous ones, what were their pitfalls, why were not they implemented, the current policies, the impacts and shortfalls of the past policies, and how the current educational policy is faring when it comes to its implementation, and what recommendations you will give when it comes to improving the current education policy. And the recommendations, or where can you find those recommendations? In various research papers or in newspaper editorials. Okay, they often, the different authors have written about they evaluate the current education policy, they discuss its shortfalls and how it can be improved. Okay, so the first thing when it comes to education, third thing should be policy options, then educational reforms. This is once again a very important topic, and even a whole essay can come on this topic, and I think it has been tested, educational reforms in Pakistan. So previous attempts at education reforms, current efforts which are being made, and suggestions for improvement. Remember, these are the angles, the lens through which you should gather information. Okay, syllabus, the issue of syllabus in our education system, it's outdated. You know, the theory of our syllabus basically doesn't haven't caught up with the actual realities, what is required in the actual world, the skills required. So our syllabus is outdated, our examination system is outdated. Basically, it judges the students based on how much they can cram, their ability to cram. There is a need for vocational training. Okay, then the medium of instruction, Urdu medium, Urdu medium, English medium. So the two parallel basically medium of exchanges are basically are in Pakistan. So they are also an issue to the educational sector, universal or all Pakistan universal education. Okay, the issue of language. Okay, so you need to basically probe the education sector of Pakistan or gather information and data through these angles. Then you have to basically comment on co-education in Pakistan. You have to have pros and cons of co-education in Pakistan. Should it be enforced, should it not be enforced, a critical evaluation. Then you need to be able to compare education sector of Pakistan with the region. And how can you do that? Because comparisons are the most effective way to develop your arguments, as I have discussed earlier, that why you need to have basically data and information about a specific topic so that you can argue effectively in your essay. So how effective comparisons can be made? If you have statistics at your hand, at your disposal. Now, what sort of statistics about education you need to have at your fingertips? Okay, remember, at your fingertips. Percentage of GDP allocated to education. Now, bifurcation of that allocation among primary, secondary, and higher education. You know, what percentage of the pie goes to primary sector, secondary sector, and higher education. Then literacy rate of Pakistan, literacy rate of different age groups, okay, like youth literacy rate of youth, then the literacy rate of male and female. Why is there a difference in the literacy rate of male and female? Reasons. Then literacy rate of the region, that is South Asia, literacy rate of India, Bangladesh. Okay, you should be able to compare the literacy rate or facts and figures of Pakistan with the region also. Okay, and you can compare it with India because they got the independence, you know, at the same time as we did. So you can make comparison. Then you can basically you should have facts about dropout ratio, you know, primary school dropout ratio in Pakistan, pupil to classroom ratio. I mean, a teacher, how many basically students are basically sitting in one classroom. Okay, and you know, because if more than ideal ratio, there is also an ideal ratio. You should search on the internet what is the ideal pupil to classroom ratio, and then you should compare it with Pakistan, that how much more students, you know, basically are sitting in one classroom. Okay, it means that if more students are basically sitting in one classroom as compared to ideal ratio, then you know, the pedagogy or the transfer of knowledge won't be very effective. Then you also need to know the effective or the ideal ratio of pupil to teacher ratio. How many students is one teacher teaching? Okay, you need to Google the ideal ratio. I mean, what is the ideal ratio of, you know, teacher to students? A teacher should be ideally teaching how many students at a time, and what is the ratio in Pakistan? I mean, if you go to government school, even in private schools, this ratio is basically very high compared to ideal ratio. So this basically is not very good when it comes to imparting quality education. I mean, teacher would come, deliver a lecture, and just go away. He won't be able to take questions from students. So pros and cons basically, disadvantages of high pupil to classroom and high pupil to teacher ratio, but you have to have statistics of these things. Now Islam, from what angles you can prepare Islam? Muslim ummah versus the West, Islam and extremism, Islam and peace. You know, is a Islam is a religion of peace. Muslim Ummah and OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, its effectiveness in the current scenario, its importancy, how recommendations to make it, once again, make it a viable platform for the Muslim Ummah. Then, is there really a clash of civilizations going on in the current, you know, world affairs? Are the wars basically based on the clash of civilizations like Islam, West, Hinduism? You know, there's a book from Samuel P. Huntington who states that the current basically trend of different wars is because of the clash of civilizations. You know, Islam and West basically can't live harmoniously. You know, it's the clash of civilizations between these two civilizations is inherent. Their belief systems basically make it impossible for them to live in peace. So is there any weight to this argument? Secondly, lastly, you can talk about stereotyping of Muslims by the West. So these are the few angles from which you can basically research about Islam. Moving on, socio-economic crisis. Okay, one you can just uh, keep this in your mind, that one topic out of 10 will be from socio-economic crisis. So what subtopics you can expect from socio-economic crisis in Pakistan? Natural resources of Pakistan. So you should be, you know, familiar with, or you should have data at your disposal about these things, so that you can effectively discuss the socio-economic crisis and their solutions. So first you need to know, you have to have information about natural resources of Pakistan and what is the nature of energy crisis. Then you have to basically know about the nature of water crisis, how it originated, when it originated, okay, the reasons behind the origin, the effects, of the water crisis and the solution to this problem. You can discuss it in terms of Kalabag Dam, Basha Dam, other dams, Indian dams which India have been building. Our rivers basically are drying up. Okay, you can talk it in other terms like, people in Pakistan waste water too much, and there should be a concept of water meters as it is in Israel, because Israel is also facing has been facing water shortage, so they introduced water meters where basically people are charged based on the amount of water they consume. So there are various other methods through which you can basically solve water crisis. So you need to basically come up with those solutions. So remember, I'm just telling you about you know the methodologies, the angles through which you should prepare a topic. The research part is up to you. Okay, the more basically effort you put in, the high dividends it will yield. Then the economic crisis, once again, which areas you should be covering, the economic growth, economic GDP, about the about the world economic crisis, current economic crisis, current state of economic health in the throughout the world. You can discuss different indicators about Pakistan, breakdown of economic terms. You must be familiar with the most often used economic terms in the newspaper. Okay, if you use these jargons in your essay at the right place, then believe me, this will reflect very good on your part. Okay, the examiner will basically he will realize that this student has some in-depth knowledge about economics also. Basically, economics is the core problem of Pakistan, so to speak. So you need to be aware with the economic terminology. Then you should be aware about the economic policies. I will discuss these in later on in this slide. Then the economic condition of Pakistan through all perspectives, like Pakistan's economic problems, problem with IMF and World Bank, their donations, their terms and conditions. Strings are attached with the loans, the problem of inflation, poverty, foreign investment. Okay, decreased foreign investment, new taxes. We are basically taxed mostly indirectly. Okay, government, whichever government comes, they impose indirect taxes in Pakistan and not direct taxes. The drawback of indirect taxes is that they hit disproportionately on the poor lot. Okay, whereas direct taxes are progressive in nature. they basically they charge more to those who have the ability to pay more, whereas the indirect taxes, they don't basically consider this fact in mind. They hit everyone equally, and this means that they disproportionately affect the poor. Then, of course, the topic of corruption and accountability, international scenario. After Panama Papers, basically, international wave of accountability has started. Critical evaluation of anti-corruption organizations in Pakistan, like NAB, FIA. You should be able to differentiate between NAB and FIA. What is the difference of their purpose, roles? Are they effective? Are they appropriately staffed? Okay, are they able to deal with white collar crimes, which is basically the prevalent sort of crime in today's world? So these are the angles basically from which you should be well prepared. So some statistics when it comes to economics, you should be able to know the GDP growth rate of the current year. Okay, you should be able to know the GDP growth rate of the past 5 years, of the past decade, just to make a comparison. Just stating that GDP growth rate is 4% doesn't make sense unless you basically compare it with the past. So you have to basically know the GDP growth rate of the past decade also, or you make its comparison with some other countries. Okay, some other developing countries. You should have the fact of debt to GDP ratio. This is very important, because if the ratio is high, it means that we are more susceptible to borrowing from IMF and World Bank. And this means that there would be more terms and conditions or strings attached as to how we should manage our economy. So high debt to GDP ratio is not good, but you should keep in mind, you should have facts, updated facts about debt to GDP ratio. Then you should have the statistic of external debt to GDP ratio. Now, what is the difference? Basically, why this ratio is important? Because we have to pay external debt in terms of dollars, okay? And when this debt is higher, it means that there will be more outward flow of dollars, and more outward flow of dollars would mean that the price of dollar would increase. That is, the rupee will depreciate, and if the rupee depreciates, our import burden further increases. We import oil, most of the oil we import it, so our import burden of oil would increase manifold. So we have to keep in mind, you know the external debt to GDP ratio. Remember, you don't just have to cram these ratios, you also need to know why these ratios are important. That's why I said economic terminology, knowing economic terminology. I mean, high debt, you can a candidate, if he knows debt to GDP ratio of Pakistan, he might write in the essay that one of the problems of Pakistan is high debt to GDP ratio, but he should be able to back it up with solid arguments that why this high GDP debt to GDP ratio is bad, and in what areas basically it will adversely affect our economy. So you should also be able to discern what these ratios mean, then the trends of these ratios and all those things. So pay special attention to economic terminology, because most of the students are at a disadvantage, and since economics is a very technical subject, you have to put in some extra effort. Believe me, this will help you in a lot of other areas also. It will help you in current affairs, it will help you in Pakistan affairs. So, and of course it will help you in essay exam. So governance, this is once again a very often repeated topic in CSS essay exam. And what should we be covering about governance? First, democracy. What was the past of democracy? A checkered past, okay? Then what is the present scenario about democracy? Is it stable, is it not? What are the pitfalls? What is the future of democracy? Okay, is it no more vulnerable, is it still vulnerable? The reasons, okay, about the state of the economy, is it vulnerable or not? Suitability of democracy for Pakistan. Remember, you should always defend this, that democracy is the best model for Pakistan. Why? Because in Pakistan, you know various ethnicity, Pakistan is a country where various ethnicities live, where various linguistic people from various linguistic backgrounds live. So democracy is the only solution to our problems, because it gives representation to all the strata of the society. Then compare democratic regimes with dictatorial regimes in terms of economic growth, civil liberties, and all those things. Then you should discuss a way forward, that is how democracy in Pakistan can be further strengthened, and in which you can just write about accountability, the civilian government should deliver, and some constitutional basically terms you have to basically dig out when it comes to democracy. Then an allied issue with democracy is good governance which can be good or bad. So you should be able familiar with some ideal models of governance, okay? Like some countries which have very good models of governance. Now it's your headache, okay, to find out information, to collect data about this. Now you should be able to comment on the state of governance in Pakistan. Of course, it's not ideal, it's not good. Then you should be able to have 5 to 6 reasons for bad governance, and then you should be able to have 5 to 6 suggestions. Now if you have whatever I have discussed till now, if you have 4 to 5 bullet points, then believe me, whatever sort of essay comes in your exam, you will be able to tackle it effectively. So I would advise that you pick up a register, you write the main heading like governance, then you know skip 3 to 4 pages, then you write the heading of the next topic. And whenever you basically read newspaper or editorials and you come across some interesting fact, you just jot it down under that heading, let's suppose under governance. So in this way you would already be gathering information in a very organized way, and when some essay shows up regarding that topic, you naturally would be able to jot down or basically convert your thought process into a well organized essay. So this is the way to basically collect and gather information. Of course, you can talk about local bodies, okay, why they are effective, new provinces, the need for new provinces, is it practical, also is it practicable in the current situations. Suggestions shouldn't be a wish list, as I often tell my students. I mean, they should be backed up by why. Okay, by is it possible or not. Okay, and if it is possible, what steps should we take to make it possible. So you shouldn't just say that, okay, new provinces is the solution to good governance, or local bodies is the solution to the good governance. You should also have some solid bullet points in your mind that how it can be achieved. Like the creation of new provinces, it's basically a very thorny issue in Pakistan. So you have to have some points in your mind how to basically bring other parties, other different basically different interested motives on the negotiating tables, what can be offered, what can be given to arrive at a consensus. And study governance model of some successful countries. Moving on, national integration. So first you need to have a historical perspective. Why is Pakistan not integrated as a nation? You need to find out the causes of disintegration. Okay, of course there is a sense of deprivation, like East Pakistan there was a sense of deprivation. In the case of Balochistan there is a sense of deprivation. Then current cleavages on various grounds. Cleavages means that basically current basically the defects, okay, the current basically जिसको आप कहते हो कि दरारें, okay, the current दरारें किस बेसिस पे हैं, वेरियस ग्राउंड्स पे हैं अब आजकल, टॉकिंग अबाउट टुडे, okay, in the recent times, in the current time, what are the various grounds on which there are various cleavages, role of pressure groups, in basically preventing us from becoming a nation. And these could be religious groups, nationalist groups. Okay, what is their role, what is their positive role, what is their negative role, sorry, how can they be neutralized. Way forward toward integration, inclusive economic growth. Okay, there should be no economic deprivation, adequate representation at the federal level. These are some of the methods. Then you should be able to quote some statistics also. NFC award distribution, which basically distributes the resources between the federation and the provinces. Is this formula equitable? Okay, is there need for further tweaking in this formula to basically put off the sense of deprivation? You should be able to know, you should basically be very familiar with NFC. What is it? It's past 7th NFC award. Why was it successful? Is there further need for tweaking in this formula to achieve the objectives? The issue of royalties, gas royalties from Balochistan and all the gas royalties from Sindh, these are often the bone of contention between the provinces, and of course they are a hurdle towards interprovincial harmony. Media, of course, what you need to know, from which angles you need to prepare media and state. Should state interfere in the media? To much extent is state interfering in media in Pakistan? Journalism ethics, okay, should there be some ethics? Of course there should be. To what extent they are followed in Pakistan? They are not followed to a great extent. Media and freedom of speech, should there be some limitations on freedom of speech? Media and its power, like Arab Spring, in which social media played a very important part. Emergence of a third political force in Pakistan due to social media. Then you can talk about social media. Is it a blessing or a ban, or is it a curse? Role of media in the development of any country. Media and democracy, are these both indispensable for each other? Is a strong media basically a prerequisite for a strong democracy or an effective democracy? The concept of yellow journalism, this is a media specific jargon. You should be able to know, you should know it. The consequences, suggestions to improve, suggestions to curb yellow journalism, and various statistics which are published internationally, like index on freedom of press. You should be able to basically quote the number at which Pakistan stands, okay, about freedom of press, and all those things. So you should be able to collect statistics and facts on these areas. Crisis management, once again a very interesting topic. It includes disaster management. You should be familiar with major disasters in world and in Pakistan, recent natural disasters in Pakistan, strategy to mitigate their negative effects, disaster recovery plans of floods, earthquake, terrorist attacks, fire and mob situations. These are the most experienced, basically most often faced disaster or crisis situations in Pakistan. So you should be able to explain in a very practical situation that how disaster recovery plans should be made and put into practice on these fronts. Then relevant authorities in Pakistan, like disaster management authority. There are other also authorities which deal with specific areas, like ERA deals with earthquake and the victims of earthquake. So you should be familiar with those authorities in Pakistan and why they are not basically delivering effectively. How can they be improved? I mean, either they are understaffed or either they are not getting appropriate budget. Then you should be able to quote some statistics about the death toll from various disasters, the economic loss of life. Along these lines, you should have some facts and figures, statistics at your disposal. Moving on, terrorism and extremism. Reasons, causes, psycho, socio, economic, political effects of terrorism and extremism, and solution. This is the basic. Okay, you should have 4 to 5 points at your disposal. You should know 4 to 5 points about these reasons, causes, psychological psychological effects, social effects, economic effects, political effects of terrorism and extremism, and the solutions. War against terrorism and its economic cost. Okay, it ranges somewhere between 120 billion dollars, and you can relate it to the basically aid which we have received through coalition support fund. It's very little compared to the economic loss which Pakistan has suffered. You should basically be aware of the latest statistics about this. Then terrorism and dialogue. Of course, basically you should basically have sound arguments that either dialogue is possible with the terrorists. You should be able to explain terrorism from Afghanistan Pakistan perspective. Then sectarian issues, very important. Ethnic violence in Pakistan, like Shia Hazaras are often targeted. Historical perspective of ethnic violence and sectarian issues, their effects, their remedies. Then of course statistics. Statistics also, I have given you the different lens from which to look at a topic. Now it's your turn to present arguments from these lens and to have statistics. Okay, statistics from these angles. Moving on, UN. What is the mission of the UN and what it is actually doing? Then developed countries and their discriminatory trends when it comes to UN. Some people say that UN is basically just a proxy of United Nations Security Council. You should know about the past, present, and future about UN. Okay, different essay topics regarding UN have come in the past papers. Okay, you should search them, that which of the topics in the past papers are about UN. Then Pakistan and UN, relationship of Pakistan with the UN. Then you should be able to quote some statistics like Pakistan's contribution to peacekeeping missions, UN's contribution to different sectors in the form of United Nations Development Program, UNICEF, and all these things. Environmental issues, once again, global warming. What is this phenomenon of global warming? How it is caused? Okay, what are its effects? negative effects, what are the solutions, and some recommendations. Then global and national initiatives that have been taken to curb the issue of global warming, like Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement. Then you should know that names of different treaties and protocols which deal with environmental issues or global environmental issues. American withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, its effects on basically the global move or the global movement to curb this issue of global warming. Then you should be able to quote some statistics like Pakistan's risk index when it comes to global warming. Okay, latest index you should be able to. I don't recall the latest index, but you should basically Google it and you should be able to write about it, quote it. How much people have been killed in different, environmental related disasters like heat waves in Karachi, floods, uneven rains, the economic costs of these disasters. Health, once again, very important issue. You should pay very clear, very clear attention to this topic. Now, related article of the Constitution of Pakistan, you should know this. Now, the policy options: policy on health, previous policies, current policies, the impacts of previous policies, why they fell short in achieving the goals, sustainable development goals, which of the 17 sustainable development goals relate relates to health, and what does it stipulate, what objectives it basically aims to achieve that sustainable development goal. So you should be familiar with that. Health reforms in Pakistan, what were the attempts made in the past, what are the current efforts being made, and suggestions for improvement. Then comparison of the health sector of Pakistan with the region. Okay, once again I reiterate that comparisons are very important, and you can only compare you if you have the related statistics of the region, of the countries, of our neighbors. For example, you should have at your fingertips the basically these statistics, which is the percentage of GDP allocated to health sector and the bifurcation of that percentage among primary, secondary, and tertiary healthcare sector, mortality rates, infant mortality rates, you know, life expectancy, doctor to patient ratio, hospital bed to patient ratio, what are the ideal ratios of what are the ideal doctor to patient ratio and hospital bed to patient ratio, what are these ratios in Pakistan. Okay, compare these ratios with, let's suppose, the region South Asia with India. Okay, the more comparison you make, the more basically solid your argument would be. Now CPAC, I don't need to basically go into detail about CPAC because you all know. You need to know about One Belt One Road initiative, you need to know background about CPAC, components of CPAC, economic implications for Pakistan, China, the region, that is Central Asian states, Southeast Asia, Far East, economic implications for world. Then you need to know the social implications of CPAC for Pakistan, the region, the world. Then the conflicts, potential conflicts which can arise due to rise of China, like proxy wars to stop CPAC. And then statistics, of course you need to collect each and every statistic from every facet, from every lens about CPAC. You can't just ignore this topic. So lastly, Pakistan. Check and sort carefully the past papers from 2000 onwards and make a list of every topic which includes Pakistan in it. Okay, directly which includes Pakistan in it. Then you will be able to further, streamline about your preparation, about from which angles to prepare the essay when it comes to issues about Pakistan. So that is it for today's lecture. I hope it was very useful. The purpose of today's lecture was basically to tell you the importance of gathering information and collecting data, why it is important, why the examiner basically wants that you quote effective, relevant, and updated data, and what are the techniques through which angles you should be able to collect the data. Okay, I hope that this lecture has made a lot of things clear, and now it is up to you basically to collect data from all these angles, through all the techniques which I have taught you. And if you know, it's up to you now. The more the information you gather and you basically memorize it and you are able to recall it on the exam day, the more weightage your basically arguments would carry. So that is it for today. uh, Good luck with your exams. Meet you I will basically meet you in the next lecture. So till then, goodbye.